The Mimic! Hello everyone, today's video we're going to be talking about the Mimic in Security Breach Ruin. I will be giving you all the information you need to know about the Mimic in the Tales of the Pizzaplex books, then moving on to the DLC Ruin, and how Tales of the Pizzaplex builds up to Ruin. Finally, we're going to try and fill in the gaps and theorise all about the Mimic and how Gregory and Vanessa fit into that. First, I'm going to give you all of the literal facts that are in Tale of the Pizzaplex, all about the Mimic. I'm doing this video because in Ruin, we don't really get a lot of information about the Mimic yet. Maybe in a future game. I think a lot of people are confused about who the Mimic is because they haven't read the books. And the only way at the moment to get more information about the Mimic is to read the books. So if you're a bit confused about the Mimic and you want to know more about him, this video is for you. So let's get into it. So where did the Mimic come from? The Mimic is rumoured to be built around the 1980s. He was built by an engineer called Edwin Murray. Edwin was an engineer hired by Fazbear Entertainment to make new animatronics and creations and repairing stuff. Edwin actually created the Mimic for his 4-year-old son. He was made to keep his 4-year-old son entertained while he was working. The Mimic was originally created for good, right? It wasn't made as a terrible, horrific creation. It was made for good. The clue is in the name, the Mimic. The Mimic imitates behavior, copies what it sees. It's basically its own AI. The Mimic will learn and copy things that it sees. If I made the Mimic watch 10,000 Dawko videos, the Mimic would literally be me, okay? And we don't want 2 Dawkos. I hope that makes sense. The Mimic just imitates behavior that it sees. Unfortunately, in the story, Edwin's son dies in a car accident. And because of this, obviously, Edwin is filled with grief about what's happened. When Edwin sees the Mimic again, it reminds Edwin of his son. So it ends up with Edwin destroying the Mimic violently, beating the Mimic with rage and grief about what's happened to his son, and abandons the factory with the Mimic still inside, supposedly destroyed. What did I say earlier? The Mimic learns and imitates behavior. The Mimic does survive being destroyed by Edwin. So the Mimic has seen Edwin, POV, smashing him up with rage and anger and agony and grief. The Mimic's gonna learn that. You'll see what happens with the Mimic learning that behavior. So like I said, Edwin abandons the factory with the Mimic inside. Fazbear Entertainment obviously want to know what's going on. What's happened to Edwin? Where are our amazing animatronics that Edwin was supposed to make? Fazbear Entertainment get a team sent out to the factory to investigate what's going on. Now, unfortunately, the team that are sent there meet a terrible fate. They all get killed by the Mimic, because the Mimic has learned to be aggressive and angry, learnt it from his creator, Edwin. He kills all of the team who were sent there to the factory. The Mimic has now learned and has been programmed now from looking at what's happened to be incredibly aggressive. The Mimic hides in various costumes in the factory to ambush the team who go and investigate where he is. So remember that, because that's a big detail that you see in Ruin of the Mimic using costumes. In the distant future, during the construction of the Pizzaplex, the Mimic is back. The Glamrock animatronics and the Mimic were sent to the Pizzaplex. Now, this is where the lore gets pretty crazy and really, really cool. During the construction of the Pizzaplex, we know that below that underground is the old iconic FNaF 6 location, the pizzeria. They wanted to make that pizza place a museum for people to go and visit as an attraction at the Pizzaplex. Fazbear Entertainment hire a team of workers to clean up the old pizza place that was discovered and to turn it into a museum. Now, Fazbear Entertainment decide to send some of the animatronics down there to help the workers clean the place up. And one of those animatronics is the Mimic. One of the workers tries to program the Mimic while they're down there to help remove the animatronic parts. In the pizza place, there's a bunch of old, rotten endoskeleton animatronics that they don't want to keep. So they're removing the parts from the animatronics, the heads, the legs, and stuff. So one of the workers programs the Mimic to help do that because, removing parts is going to be a lot easier for an animatronic to do because they're super strong. So at first, the Mimic works doing that. Programming works. The Mimic starts to help rip open animatronic parts, pull the heads off and stuff. The Mimic then turns onto humans, the workers who are there, and starts ripping their limbs off. Because it's programmed to because it was programmed to rip open animatronic heads and legs and stuff. but then it turns onto the humans and rips them open instead. And the Mimic wipes them all out. Everybody down there is wiped out by the Mimic. That site is then sealed off, okay? Because of what happened with the Mimic, because of the disaster what happened with the Mimic, Fazbear Entertainment completely seal off the pizza place, and the Mimic is now currently in there. And for now, the pizza place is done for. That's it. In this story, Fazbear Entertainment, we're going to have it as a museum. That explains why the pizza place looks like a construction site going down there. Now, this is a bonus story, which I thought was really cool about the Mimic. A group of teenagers at the pizzaplex discover the abandoned construction site of the pizza place. They actually find a ventilation system that leads directly into the pizza place. And of course, because it's been sealed off, the Mimic is still inside. Now, again, in this story, all of the teenagers are killed by the Mimic in different ways. The Mimic hides in animatronic suits again, ambushes them, tricks them. And one of the biggest points that I want to make in this, that goes forward to Ruin as well, at one point they find a radio in the pizza place. The Mimic intercepts that radio signal, pretending to be somebody calling for help who needs help, who is trapped down there. They believe that somebody's there and they go into the room and it's the Mimic, okay? So, very big detail, very similar to Ruin, obviously, because the Mimic can intercept radio signals, walkie-talkies, you know, and can pretend to be people. The Mimic was pretending to be somebody else trapped inside. Very similar to Ruin, the Mimic pretending to be Gregory. Now, I'm going to read something because in that story, the teenagers find notes about the Mimic. When the team created the Mimic line, they didn't want to have to program in every show routine, step by step. That was a lot of coding. So they just programmed the Mimic to basically watch and learn. Not only could a Mimic fit into any costume, it was designed to observe the other routines and then mimic them. It seems like the original Mimic began mimicking not just the other animatronics, but also people. And it did in ways that weren't intended. I'm not sure what it did. I can just make out the words misconstrue, scared, potential disaster, and deactivate remaining Mimic endos. Like I said earlier, guys, at that factory, Edwin and the team were making Mimic animatronics. And unfortunately, that Mimic animatronic turned out to be a disaster. That is it so far about the Mimic in the books. That is the story so far about the core Mimic. That is the Mimic animatronic endoskeleton, not the virus, okay? Remember that. And like I said, the Pizzaplex stories are not finished yet. So I will probably in the future have to make another video about the Mimic in the future, because the epilogue is not finished yet in the books, all about the Mimic. It's not finished yet. The Pizzaplex is a lot older than we originally thought. Let's talk about the virus, because the virus is in the Pizzaplex books as well. In the game lore, we count that as Glitch Trap. Basically, the virus in the stories is the Mimic. The Mimic programming was installed in this big tree in the center of the Pizzaplex. Basically, it's a virus. The virus can control and change all of the Glamrock animatronics, tell the Glamrock animatronics what to do, change their personalities, make Monty aggressive. So it's extremely similar to Glitch Trap. A very specific detail in the book about the Mimic programming. It takes stories from the past and creates new scenarios in VR, AR, and any Fazbear Entertainment video games. Basically, it's a tiny little bit complicated, but try and think about it. The Mimic is its own character, its own animatronic, its own endoskeleton. But there's also the virus, but that's also a part of the Mimic as well, if that makes sense, because the virus was from the programming of the Mimic, if that makes sense. The programming that was used to make the Mimic animatronic endoskeleton was also used that created the virus in the Security Breach Pizzaplex books. Like I said at the start of the video, the Mimic learns. It mimics things. If a specific chip was scanned in FNaF VR, that had the memories and the agony of William Afton's murders and William Afton's story, I wonder what the Mimic would mimic if that was scanned into the games. The Mimic virus mimics Afton. That's why the virus in FNaF VR, Princess Quest, etc. takes its form as Glitch Trap. The Mimic is mimicking Spring Bonnie, aka William Afton. And remember, that part, what I'm talking about with glitch trap and stuff is just a theory. That isn't a fact. That's it so far with the pizzaplex stories. Now, let's move on to Ruin and talk about what ending's canon, what happened with the Mimic, why the Mimic was sealed down there, who sealed the Mimic before Ruin as well. It's pretty crazy. The Mimic is its own thing, yes, but glitch trap in Security Breach is a part of Mimic as well. The canon ending in Security Breach is Princess Quest. Princess Quest is the canon ending in Security Breach. I am gazillion% confident. There's too many hints. There's too much evidence to show that Princess Quest is canon. Number one, all of the drawings that we collect around Ruin from Gregory are all of the different endings in Security Breach. The only one that isn't there is Princess Quest. All of the other endings are not canon. Steelwall did that to show that Princess Quest is canon, okay? That's it. When you go into Vanny's hideout, you see the Princess Quest machine with the iconic sword from Princess Quest stabbed into the arcade cabinet machine. That's basically saying that Glitch Trap has been defeated. It's done. Glamrock Freddy is another big one. When we see Glamrock Freddy, it's headless. With the Princess Quest ending, before that, we get the cutscene of Glamrock Freddy getting disassembled by the help bots. His stomach gets ripped up. He gets destroyed by Vanny. But Gregory manages to keep his head. There's a lot more evidence of that, but those are the basics. Princess Quest ending is the canon ending of Security Breach. Gregory saves Vanessa. Glitch Trap is killed. No more Glitch Trap. Glitch Trap is dead. It's over. No Glitch Trap at the end of Security Breach. He's gone. Of course, Glitch Trap is destroyed. The virus is destroyed around the pizzaplex. The virus is gone. The main problem is still there. The Mimic is still around. Let me just say this. So, Burn Trap never happened, okay? Burn Trap never happened in Security Breach. But Burn Trap would have happened if Gregory did not save Vanessa. The virus was making Vanessa turn the Mimic endoskeleton into Burn Trap. Like I said, guys, earlier, the Mimic was mimicking Afton, okay? That's why the Mimic wanted to get turned into like this Burn Trap amalgamation of like the old suit and stuff. It never happened anyway, guys. That is not canon. It never happened because Gregory managed to save Vanessa before that ended up happening. I really, really hope that makes sense. One of the problems, the virus within the pizzaplex has now been destroyed, right? Burn Trap never happened. None of that ever happened. But the problem is still there. The Mimic is still alive. The Mimic is still down there. So although the virus is gone and Vanessa's been freed, the Mimic is still down there. The Mimic is going to cause problems later on. The major problem is not dealt with yet. Although the virus is gone, the Mimic's still there. So we've now Vanessa set free and the happy ending actually happened. Vanessa and Gregory work together to stop the Mimic for good. The first thing they do to stop the Mimic is to seal the Mimic up. So the Mimic is trapped somewhere so he can't escape or anything. If you go down to where the Mimic is sealed, you can see there's a backpack that says Gregory. That confirms that Gregory was there at some point. Also, there's a ventilation system with a handprint, a very interesting detail. Why would Steelwall do that? How did the Mimic get a walkie-talkie in the first place? Ironically, a Glamrock Freddy walkie-talkie. This is how the Mimic was trapped and sealed. Gregory lures the Mimic down into the storage. We know how aggressive the Mimic is. You know, the Mimic would definitely follow Gregory down. When the Mimic follows Gregory, Vanessa then seals the entrance up with concrete. Gregory barely and luckily escapes by going through the vent. Like I said, guys, it was a close escape. Gregory, unfortunately, dropped or accidentally left his walkie-talkie in that room where the Mimic is. That then obviously sets up to Ruin. Gregory is the one who sealed up the Mimic. So, of course, he's going to mimic Gregory. Can you imagine the past of the Mimic? Tricking so many people in the past, killing a bunch of people, you know, being the king of mimicking, and then get sealed away by Gregory because Gregory tricked him. The Mimic is going to be so angry about that. He wants to kill Gregory so badly. The Mimic has learned so much about Gregory as well. Camera footage at one point of Gregory roaming around in the cameras exploring the pizzaplex. The Mimic will have all of that because of Glitch Trap the virus. The Mimic would have been watching Gregory. That's why the Mimic is so good at mimicking Gregory, because he has all of this information about Gregory in the past. He even mimics old voice lines that Gregory had in Security Breach.
Are you there? I'm trapped. Freddy, are you there? trapped.
That's why the Mimic has a walkie-talkie. That's why the Mimic is mimicking Gregory. And that's why the Mimic knows Gregory's best friend is Cassie. And that's why the Mimic uses Cassie as bait, pretending to be her close friend Gregory to lure her into the pizzaplex to set him free. It's not only that, we've got to talk about MXES. MXES is a security system programmed by Vanessa and Gregory. It's another thing to stop people from going into the pizzaplex being lured by the Mimic. The security system was made by Vanessa and Gregory to stop anybody ever setting the Mimic free in the future. That's why the Mimic throughout the whole game tells Cassie to destroy the security nodes. All of those security nodes, so many of them, eventually led down to where the Mimic was. And because there's no security anymore at the end, the concrete seal gets destroyed and the Mimic gets set free. That rabbit that we were terrified through the whole playthrough of Ruin was actually a good guy. He was programmed by Vanessa and Gregory to stop people from letting the Mimic escape. This is also backed up by the Candy Cadet story. The Candy Cadet story talks about a mother and a boy who trapped this monster in the basement. That's basically talking about Vanessa and Gregory trapping the Mimic down, literally a basement, yeah, underground. The monster in the story starts to learn the mother's lullaby, basically lures the boy into the basement. The Mimic then learns Gregory's voice and then lures Cassie down there to get him out. Unfortunately, the Mimic succeeds. Cassie gets tricked by the Mimic throughout the whole playthrough. Cassie destroys all of the security nodes, shuts off MXES, which then gives power to the forklift that breaks the concrete seal. And the Mimic set free. I know there's a couple of different endings, but I do think that's the canon ending for Ruin. And it's leading up to a future game with the Mimic, Vanessa, Gregory, and probably Cassie as well. Because at the end of that, when the elevator's cut off, Roxy does call out Cassie. To me, that shows that Cassie is still alive from the elevator collapsing and Roxy saves her. I do have more notes. These are like little extra notes for some questions that you might have. The timeline is in the game lore. Security breach happened. Princess Quest ending. Vanessa and Gregory go back to deal with the Mimic and they succeed. They seal the Mimic up. They create a security program. That leads to Ruin because unfortunately Gregory dropped his walkie-talkie. The Mimic now has something to lure people in. The Mimic knows all about Gregory, so he'll know about Cassie. That then results into Cassie being lured into the pizzaplex by the Mimic. The Mimic succeeds. The Mimic now has an escape, which then is probably going to lead to a future game. Security Breach 2, a future DLC, or just a separate name completely, just a new FNaF game focused on the Mimic. I gave you guys the facts about the books, I gave you guys the facts about Security Breach and Ruin, and then we theorized a little bit at the end and tried to make our own story a little bit, but I feel like that fits in quite nicely. Let me know your thoughts, guys. Do you have any questions? Do you have any ideas of your own? Put them in the comment section, please. Didn't want to make it too complicated. It does get a little complicated with the virus and stuff, but I hope that helped a little bit. I hope you guys can see now that the Mimic is great. You know, the Mimic, I think the Mimic's going to be a great villain. I'm really glad Steelwool took this route to make like a new villain that's secretly been there the whole time. It's pretty exciting, and it's going to lead up to a future game, guys. 100%. I'm 100% confident in that. We might get more Mimic stuff in Help Wanted 2, maybe. But I do think it's going to be more than that. There's going to be another game that happens after Security Breach. One more thing as well. I know what you guys are going to ask. What's the deal with the Blob? What's the deal with the Blob? Like, what's going on with the Blob? Who is the Blob? Why do we see Blob at the start of Ruin? Steelwool did that to show that although Burn Trap didn't happen, the Blob is canon. The Blob exists. It wasn't just there. It wasn't just there for the Burn Trap ending. The Blob is real. So reading all the Pizzaplex books about the Mimic killing a bunch of people down at the pizza place, I think the Blob is all of the employees, workers at the Pizzaplex who got killed by the Mimic. So originally we thought, oh, the Blob is killing Burn Trap because Burn Trap is an Afton virus, and you know the Blob is like the spirits of the kids from FNaF 6, and I don't think it is anymore. I think the reason why the Blob went after Burn Trap, and the Blob will probably still be hunting for the Mimic, it's all of the workers who got killed at the Pizzaplex. And the reason why the Blob is still lurking around the Pizzaplex is because he's still there for a start. The Blob's still there. The Blob's basically like a guardian of the Pizzaplex, if that makes sense. All of the workers who know about the Mimic the blob's like lurking around the pizzaplex still. Still, we'll put the blob at the start of Ruin to show that the blob is still there. It's still canon. Maybe in the next game, we're going to see the blob again. I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. It was a long one, but I really hope that helped. I think the Mimic is great, and I'm looking forward to the future of it. Like I said, any questions, put them in the comment section, and any theories. But I feel like that was pretty solid. Take care, lots of love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.